Hello internet friends, welcome back. So in this episode I'm going to talk about Mos Eisley. I'm not going to focus on getting up levels, that kind of thing. Just talk about Mos Eisley, this starting city, why it's so popular. Obviously it's popular because of the movies. It's like the most famous planet in the movies. So, but it happens to be the one where you get dropped off. So this is where everyone starts, and it remains the most popular city on most servers, and it's certainly the most popular on Star Wars Galaxies Legends. But there are reasons other than the canon and that little mechanic of you starting here, in that a lot of amenities are in Mos Eisley. Before you get your house and you join a guild and you have a player city and all that stuff, a lot of the things that you need in the early game are in Mos Eisley. So in this episode I'm going to talk about that. People come here to get buffed, they come here to buy items, they come here to use the bank, they come here to socialize in the cantina. And that's the reason. So there's a lot of stuff going on in Mos Eisley. Before I get onto that, I want to talk a little bit about your experience of wandering through Mos Eisley. I've seen a few people online kind of trying to get to the stage where there is less buffing and less stuttering as they run through the city. They kind of think there's something wrong with their setup, something wrong with their computer, maybe their internet connection, it's laggy and stuff. The fact is that when you run through a heavily populated city in Star Wars Galaxies, it's always going to stutter a little bit. I'm playing right now in the middle of the afternoon in, there you go, you can see it stuttering. That's nothing to do with my computer, it's nothing to do with my internet connection, it's to do with the game loading the elements of the environment, loading other players who are in the vicinity. There's no way to really get around that. You just have to give it that time that it needs to load that stuff in, and generally once it's loaded in, as you can see, then it steadies out and slows down. But in any populated area like this, you're going to get that stuttering, so don't worry. You'll see as I come around here, this is the famous cantina in Star Wars with the dewback outside the front, but if I go in here, you'll see the game slow down as all the people inside the cantina start to load in, right? So don't spend a lot of time messing about with your graphics trying to stop that happening. It's always going to happen to a certain extent, no matter how powerful your rig is or how fast your internet connection is. That's one thing to mention. The other thing to mention in terms of graphics, a few people were asking about graphics. So the only thing that as I mentioned in the first episode, I don't have the graphics options for ILM here. All I have is reshade, and that and I don't actually load that from the Star Wars Galaxies launcher. I'll put you a link to the reshade website that allows you to add a version of reshade that gives you a few more options than the one that comes packaged with the launcher if you want that. But yeah, as I say, I'll link to that. But other than that, my graphics settings, if you're interested, are I have my particle limit fairly low. I don't like too many of them, but you need a few, because if you set them too low, then certain combat things that you need to see, it looks strange, they don't fire. If you put the particle limit right down to the bottom, it looks like you're not doing anything. So you need a few of them, but they can get a bit obnoxious if you put them right up to the top. Brightness, contrast is self-explanatory. Viewing distance and field of view. This is the one where, not that one. Yeah, field of view is up to you, isn't it? Let me just do a little bit of messing around here so you can see how it changes things. I like mine on kind of quite a wide field of view, so everything is slightly elongated for me. Viewing distance, put right up to the top. If you can see, if you look at the mountains up in the up in this area here, you can see as I put the viewing distance up, they become more defined and have a little bit more detail on them. There are other miscellaneous things here. Enable character level of detail manager. That I think it renders characters who are a little bit distant with less polygons, so that can help with the loading and stuff. But all these objects are up to you. Fade objects I prefer the pop in than having things fade in the distance. But everything is being loaded in the same way, so it's just a graphical difference. What you prefer, whether they fade or pop. Camera height. It's interesting, isn't it? So you can have a really over the top view there, or come down behind your character. That's again, this is all personal preference. And these are things I hardly ever mess about with once I set them, like 2 years ago. I haven't really touched them again. So static object level of detail, it's very subtle change. So if we go up here, you can see sort of on the screen, if I do the static object level of detail, it just brings in a little bit more texture. You can see, if you see on screen there, the moisture evaporator. If I bring up the static object level of detail, it gets a little bit more texture on it, doesn't it? A little bit more definition. With regards to that, there are shadows options in the game. I don't have any on at the minute. All I have is simple shadows. So you can see at the people's feet here, this little round shadow. Now if you put volumetric shadows on, you can see the shadows get much more defined. There's a problem with volumetric shadows though, and that make them pretty non-character shadows. It will show it in a minute. That make it a little bit objectionable. It's entirely up to you, but I really don't like it. So you can see here, it's very, very harsh, and I think it's too much. Basically, it makes this whole thing. I know it's sunset, but this doesn't look good to me. It just looks too abrupt. All the shadows are too harsh on the building, so I tend to turn mine off. But the main reason I don't use volumetric shadows is, let's see if we can get it to happen now as I pan the camera around. You'll see the shadows are almost like a light level that's laid on top of the buildings around me, and as I go around, you'll see them pop in and out of existence. You see there was a little bit of it there, but if I wander through, there's a lot of flicker and popping in and out of shadows. It's more objectionable sometimes than others. This isn't too bad right now, but you can see there, do you see that shadow appear and disappear just here? So it's the shadow that's been thrown by the side of this building, but as I walk past it vanishes and then pops back in. There you go, that one just vanished, that one vanished. As I turn around, suddenly the shadows come and go like that right here. So for that reason, I find volumetric shadows very distracting, and in certain light situations, with the sunset on different planets, and on Tatooine at sunset in particular, it can become very distracting. It's almost like, yeah, so you're walking along here, a nice row of shadows, and then you turn that way, shadows are gone at your feet, popping in and popping out. So that's why I don't use volumetric shadows. If that doesn't bother you, then go ahead and use them, but it really bothers me. It's like running around in some sort of weird disco. So those are just some graphics options I wanted to go over, but I've not done anything special here. The other thing to mention is global terrain detail and high detail range. The way Star Wars Galaxies works is the landscape is kind of procedurally generated, so as you move through it, things are loaded in from kind of on the fly, and these terrain high detail range is something that really affects that. So if you crank this up to the top, you'll probably see my screen now go down to almost like, see it stutter there? That's because it's trying to load all these characters, all the little bumps and crags in the mountains there. As I go along, you see my frame rate is suffering now as I go around. This is just the nature of the game, and as I say again, even if you have a beast of a PC, I don't think you're going to be able to get around this problem. So I tend to find terrain high detail range, keep it about there. Much smoother frame rate, but you still get a decent amount of detail. You can bring it up slightly, a little bit more than that. But if you crank it up to the top, it really tanks your machine. And high detail range doesn't have as much of an effect, but it still has an effect. So if you want to get things moving a little bit smoother, global terrain detail or terrain high detail range might be something you want to look at. Also, there are these options as well, the flora and fauna in the game. You can really notice it on a planet like Corellia, the grass and flowers and whatnot. Whether you want to render those at all, and you can also adjust the distance at which those flowers generate in the world. So, but even on maxed settings, the grass won't go up too far away from you. I just remembered I'm level 5, so I am going to get attacked by these guys. Not used to it. Get lost. Oh, come on. Nah. Screw it. Leave me alone. I'm only a starter Wookiee. There we go. So I wanted to go through that because I think it is important, and it's easy. It's stuff that's easy to forget once you're very familiar with the game. That these are all questions people might have. So, why do people come to Mos Eisley? That's one reason. This here is a garage. So if your ship, your speeder, once you've bought one, dies, it will get packed up into your datapad and it will say disabled in your datapad. Open your datapad and it will be in here. And as you can see, this guy's just repaired his. So he brought his out in vicinity of this garage here. If you bring up your map, it will say parking garage. This is, and then you can bring up the radial menu on your speeder and you can repair it at this garage. Just have to pay a bit of money. And where would you buy a speeder? This is one of the main reasons that Mos Eisley continues to be a hub. It has a bazaar, access to the bazaar, but bazaars in player cities work regionally. So if you go to the bazaar in Corellia, it won't have the same items as the bazaar in Mos Eisley. And if people want to sell stuff on the bazaar, not player vendors, that's a different thing that we'll come to in a minute. They generally come to the bazaar in Mos Eisley and put the items up here. So this is the bazaar. Radial menu, you should have that all set up if you followed my guide on setting up your keybinds and the auto attack and controls and whatnot. It's in the previous episode, linked to in the previous episode. And this is the bazaar. I do also have, and I'll link here, another tutorial on using the bazaar because it can be quite confusing. So these are all the categories of items. It's not arranged very intuitively. This will take some time to figure out exactly what you're looking for. Say you want a swoop bike. You could type swoop. See what comes up. Vehicle deed, swoop. But if you want to know the actual category that it's in, you just have to get familiar with these categories and it will happen over time. So deeds, vehicle deeds, and then you can see all the vehicle deeds and everything that isn't a swoop. So if you want Luke's land speeder, if you want all this other stuff, you can come in here. Like I say, I have that guide, click on that, or it's just a case of trial and error and asking people where things are if you can't find it through the search here. If you want to know exactly what is in this region, you've got these 3 buttons here. So we're doing an entire galaxy search right now. So that swoop might very well be located, if you look up here, location, it's in Rory. It's on Rory in Restus, the region called Restus, so the city of Restus. So if we want things that are in Mos Eisley, we need to click on this region. And these are all the things that are in this particular region. So swoop bikes in this region, vehicle deed. Akoi swoop is in Mos Eisley, as you can see. So that's what you're looking for. So there's a lot of stuff in Mos Eisley for beginners. What might you want at the beginning? Different weapons and whatnot. Let's have a look, see what kinds of weapons are available in Mos Eisley. RSF swords, SG-81 rifle. If you expand the weapon category here, you can have a look what kind of weapon you want. One-handed melee weapons. So as you can see, there's a decent selection in Mos Eisley. Once you get more specific, you want to expand, you want to get some more unique items that might not be on this bazaar in Mos Eisley or any of the regional bazaars in the other cities, you're going to start looking at player vendors. So for instance, if you want factory crates of food, there are food buffs in the game. And a lot of times those will be on people's personal vendors and you'll have to travel to another planet to get them. So let's say we want a big crate of Denelian fizz pudding. We go to vendor location. There might be some on the bazaar in Mos Eisley, check that first. But go to vendor location, entire galaxy. Let's do a search. And then we're going to miscellaneous, factory crate. Expand that, and let's find Denelian fizz pudding. All this stuff is better done through just showing you rather than speaking about it abstractly. So Denelian fizz pudding. These are factory crates full of fizz pudding. And you pull items out of the crate, it just saves inventory space. So if we wanted to get one of these, for instance, this person has a crate of 5. This is the number here, the number of the number of items in the crate. So 5 Denelian fizz pudding on his vendor, which is on Dantooine. It looks like you can expand these little things here and see Dantooine, Arissa Plains, I think it is. So then we would right click on that and click waypoint to vendor, then open up our datapad and look in waypoints. So that's the waypoint to that person's personal vendor in their house on Dantooine. So travel to Dantooine, activate that waypoint, and then go to it. We'll talk a little bit about waypoints later. I'm doing all this stuff out of order, but it's a good resource early on, the Bazaar, if there's stuff that you need. The other great thing is the bank. All the banks are linked, but this is gives you... The safety deposit is not so important these days, but you can deposit all your credits in your bank or withdraw credits to your kind of personal inventory. I've transferred some credits to my character so I can show you if I have to buff people. We'll talk about that in a second. But as you can see, this is the money that's in my bank down here. This is the cash that I have on me. The only difference is tipping, really. You can, if you have cash on you, you can tip directly, but even if you don't, you can tip from your bank with a bank tip command. I will show you that as well in a moment. But the main boon of this is your safety deposit. So open up your safety deposit box. So you have 100 inventory space here, in addition to the 80 that you can have in your main inventory, and you can also have a backpack. So at the early stages, before you have kind of droids with storage space, a house of your own with storage space, you can use this bank storage, your inventory. You can also get a backpack. Let's see about buying a backpack right now, and we can add another 50 inventory. So this region, come down to miscellaneous, wearable container. The cheapest, the most used backpack is one of these, the travel pack. Not that one, this one. So this region we don't have any. These are all, if you're wondering what these are pre-prepared items in a wearable container. So if someone wants a jewelry set, or here we say Jinzu razor kit for creating the Jinzu razor lightsaber, this person has put it all in a backpack and then put it on the Bazaar for people. But all we want is one of these little travel packs here. Right click on the item just to check it. It's just a travel pack with 50 space in it. That's what I want. Buy it. Click OK. Alright, and now we'll have a little bit more inventory space. Great. I had my bandolier on, so I have to take my bandolier off if I want to wear the travel pack, but I'd rather sacrifice that 3 agility, which is not going to make a huge difference for some extra inventory space. So the bank, your backpack, your main inventory should be okay for storage for a good long while. Alright, the next thing in Mos Eisley, the reason people come is for the 2 types of buffs in the game, the main types of buffs that you get from other players, and those are entertainer buffs and doctor buffs. Entertainer buffs, the reason people do them mostly is to get kinetic, good huge dose of kinetic and energy protection. Energy is like for most ranged weapons, you know, do energy, and most attacks hand to hand are kinetic damage. So you want some more kinetic and passive and energy protection. So find a likely musician or person who is dancing. You can generally tell because the people who are not AFK won't have the little AFK flag above them. People need to be at the keyboard in order to buff you in this game. So Before you ask the character what you want, you don't have to be grouped with the musician or anything. You just need, let's pull the camera back. You can see what's going on with my character when this happens. I'm going to click on this entertainer radio menu. Let's start listening. So I've started listening, and you'll see in the bottom left here, inspiration duration, 0 hours and 15 minutes. The longer that I watch, the longer the duration of whatever inspiration buff I get from these guys. That's the name that's given to the entertainer buffs, an inspiration buff. But so as you can see, the longer I watch here, it's gone up to 45 minutes, and I believe the max with someone who has all the skills unlocked is 6 hours, 6.5 hours perhaps. But most entertainers, even if they've not got anything extra, will be able to do 5.5 hours for you. So it's just a case of waiting, and at the point at which we get to the max duration, or however long you want, however long your gaming session is, you can start to chat to the entertainer. The way people do it in this game on this server tends to be by sending a tell to the entertainer that they're watching. People don't tend to do it in spatial chat, so we'll just wait until I'm ready, and then I'll tell Anarcha that I'm ready, and then they'll hopefully tell me back and say, what kind of inspiration buff are you after? And I'll show you what I'm after. I am after this is my character sheet. We can look at our personal stats, skill mods. We don't have very much at the minute, but once I've got my inspiration buff, I will have an extra 3000 kinetic resistance, energy resistance, that's what I'm going to ask for, and to keep things simple, I'm just going to ask for max agility on top of that. There's a limit to what you can have, and there are different things. So for instance, you can talk to, if you're a medic, you could talk to an entertainer and they can give you a boost to your healing potency, or if you're a crafter, you can ask for better experimentation chance, and there are all many different kinds. So do a little search online for the inspiration buffs and what's available. I could actually do that and show you with my own entertainer, but I want to do this, you know, as if that I haven't got that option. You know, this is what you guys are going to be doing. As I said, this is the middle of the afternoon in the UK. It is 2 o'clock in the afternoon, which makes it like 6 p.m. perhaps in certain parts of the US, which is where the majority of players on Legends are. And as you can see, there's loads of people. So loads of people playing the game whatever hour. The only time that you might struggle is when the server has just come back up after a restart, which tends to happen in the dead of night US, very early in the morning UK. So there's usually someone around doing these kind of services for people. This person is a master musician, and that's what they do in the game. And as I say, there's no way to AFK this. This person is here doing this. This is their job. So I'll talk about tipping. The convention is that you tip. So the entertainer will not generally ask you, when they do have the option to charge you when they do the inspiration buff, but they won't do that. It's left up to you to tip. Tipping's always a little bit of a minefield, isn't it? What I can say is that having a medic, which is a different kind of buffing than the entertainer buffs, a lot of people don't tip. So if you tip, you're already doing better than the majority of players when it comes to medic buffing. For entertainer buffing, it's hard to tell. I think basically the rule is whatever you can afford. You know, think what is valuable to you, and if the entertainer isn't happy with what you tip, well, that's up to the entertainer. It's a tip, so it's up to you. But so tip what you can afford. Don't feel bad if you can't tip hundreds of thousands. You know, I'm going to tip 10k. That's what I've chosen as my standard, whether it's a medic or an entertainer. I don't personally tip more to someone who's at the keyboard than off the keyboard. If they're providing a service to me, whether they're AFK or not, I tip the same, because they've spent the time creating that character, putting them in place to give a service to me, so I tip 10k, but that's because I've got a bit of money, so I don't go over the top. You know, sometimes some people tip millions, and that's up to them, but we're trying to be realistic, thinking about new starters and stuff. So in this occasion I'm going to tip 10k. So let's send a tell. So /tell ANARKHYA. I'm ready if you are. There's probably no reason to write in full sentences like this, but I'm an English major, so I tend to want to write proper sentences. I'm ready when you are, Anaka. I'd like kinetic protection, energy, and the rest in agility, please. And hopefully they're not too swamped under with tells and things. And they'll get back to us. There's lots of people probably in the queue before us though, so we've got to be patient. She's on the ball. We'll see if they put a cover charge on. Like I say, a lot of people don't. So we've got the kinetic protect 3000, energy 3000, and I think we get 300 agility, 250 agility. Accept. Great. So let's thank that person. Then I'll show you the bank tip. So we don't have anything on us in our inventory at the minute, so let's tip Anarkahaya 10,000 bank, and that's how you do a tip from your bank. They'll get an email telling them that you've bank tipped them, and that's how you get your inspiration buff. Let's just check that has gone through. I did tip them. Get a little confirmation there. So just ask the entertainer if you're not sure what kind of tip you want, what kind of inspiration buff you want. Ask them, they'll give you the options. Be patient if there are lots of people. I think there was only one entertainer there servicing all these different people, and they did a good job, didn't they, really quick. So this is the other kind of buff. This tends to be these stats rather than kinetic protect and things. It's more your main stats, so strength, constitution, stamina, precision, all those things are done with these medic buffs, and these are the people that tend to be AFK. So what you have to do, if you've sorted out your radial menu, as I suggested that you do, the one thing that the NG broke was certain chairs. So the radial menu doesn't work on these chairs. I can't bring it up to sit in this chair. So if you need your radial menu, don't change that. But what you do is go into your key map, and we'll just find the skill, primary action and attack, map that to something. So I have mine on control, mouse button 1. Now when I click on this using that dumbass NG main command, I will sit down on this seat like that, and as you can see in the top left, my buffs are getting applied. So I'm going to tip cord now, because tip cord 10k bank. But as I say, it's rather unfortunate. A lot of people, I've spent a good deal of time in the cantina at this stage, the med bay, which is where I am right now, getting buffed by these medics who are AFK, and I would say 80% of players don't tip. And it's bollocks. You should tip. You should tip the medic. If you don't tip, for shame. For shame. They're not at the keyboard. They're AFK. I don't have to tip. Bollocks. That's just cheap. You're just being cheap. It's just an excuse not to tip. If someone is providing a service, you tip them, whether they're at the keyboard or not. You don't say to a crafter, just because they're not there at that moment crafting a blaster for you, they've put it on their vendor, then gone away. You don't say to that crafter, well, because you didn't craft it while I was there, I'm not paying you your 10k. I want it for free. Bollocks. Tip. Tip. There's no... I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. So that's it. So that's a quick run around Mos Eisley. There are also mission terminals. There's this one here. You can have a look if you want to do some canned missions, which haven't popped up just because I'm doing demonstrations. What's wrong with that thing? Why isn't that working? Maybe it's bugged. There are other mission terminals around the place. Let's go and find one. But in the next episode, we're going to be following the quests that have been given to us. We got one from Han Solo to get a speeder, which we don't necessarily need because we can get one very easily. I'll show you just before we finish today how to get a speeder really quick. Something going wrong with these missions at the minute. Usually you can take any of these missions and get a load of missions. The crafting missions are working. For some reason the mission terminals are not working. Why would that be? Maybe it's because I'm a Londoner. No, maybe it's because I'm a Londoner. Maybe it's because I'm not the correct level yet to get those. Actually, let's do... I bet I can get exploration missions, but I probably can't get destroy missions. Let's have a look. Or maybe... No, they've been removed. You can't even choose flipping. Alright, so I don't know exactly what's going on, but I suspect it's because I'm such a low level. Maybe I can't get the mission terminals yet. All the different planets have different kind of bands within which they offer missions. So if you're kind of level 26 to 35, you go to, say, Rory. Picking that out of my arse. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but so it may be that like the band for Tatooine is between 10 and 20. You have to be between 10 and 20 to be given the mission. So, okay, that is my quick run through of the main reasons why people are in Mos Eisley. The other reason is meeting people. Grouping up and stuff. Don't be afraid to talk to people, see what's going on. People chatting in the middle of the main thoroughfare there. Sometimes if people are looking for groups, they'll come outside the spaceport. And the cantina is obviously another good place to go and meet people and hang out as you're waiting for buffs and stuff. Don't be running around all over the place. Take the time to talk to people. I hear people talking about the difficulty of playing solo. They've not met any friends, they've not met any guilds yet. Sad fact is, it takes time, it takes effort to make friends in life and in games. You've got to put the effort in, talk to people, offer help, chat. Don't always be asking for things. If you're one of these people who's constantly asking and never giving, that's not a good impression. See if you can help people. That's a good way to make friends. And just don't be shy. Talk to people. See if they need help. See if you can tag along. If it's a veteran player, often they love the idea of a lower level character hanging around with them. Just be honest and say, I'm really new. I am learning all this stuff. They might be one of those people who loves showing you around. This is the Lucky Despot, which has crash landed. I believe it used to be... God, this is my Heir to the... It's years since I read the Heir to the Empire, but I think the Lucky Despot was added with the... was Lando's ship in Heir to the Empire, was it? Anyway, I can't remember. But before I show any more of my ignorance, I'll sign off for this episode. A necessary episode, I think, just to talk through some of the basics that you might not be aware of. So I hope it helped you. And any questions, comments, as always, leave them in the comments section of the video. Thanks for watching, guys. Enjoy your time in the game. Have fun. Don't rush. Just enjoy it. All right. See you later. Bye.